Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Speak Plainly podcast, where we speak plainly about things that matter. I am your host, Owl Medicine, and today's topic is all about food. It's all about home cooking and food preparation, because I love food. I like eating food, I like smelling food, I like looking at food, I like watching other people make food on the internet. I love food. Today I'm going to talk about how awesome it is to make food at home, and why it's so fun and why it's so great. We all know that homemade food is great. It's awesome. Hooray. Good for us. Grandma makes the best food. However, there's also a ton of other stuff that we don't really think about when it comes to food that is really important. You know, it's one of those situations like when we removed all of the wolves from Yellowstone. We found out that was a serious issue, not because of the wolves, but because of everything else that happened when we removed the wolves. You remove the wolves, and then you get a bunch more herbivores, and the herbivores ate way more grass, and there wasn't enough grass to hold back erosion. So the rivers started moving around and taking away a bunch of land, and destroyed the ecosystem in a very quick, systematic way because we eliminated an apex predator. Well, the same thing is happening when it comes to our food, because we haven't been able to separate food prep from eating until a generation ago. So today I'm going to talk about tips for a fun and safe kitchen, ways to use the internet for inspiration and hard to find ingredients, why cooking and food prep is so good for people who have troubled relationships with food, i.e. me, and also experimenting with different cultures' foods teaches you about the culture. A big piece that nobody thinks about with food is about how food preparation actually helps to provide a lot of the movement that we are missing in our lives. Much of the movement that we would have gotten as hunter-gatherers, almost all of it, was based around preparing food. So if we can get some of that back, then maybe we don't have to spend as much time doing sit-ups and that sort of thing. Also, there are tons of psychological benefits, and I'm going to do some comparisons for kind of some outdated things I've recently learned about fresh versus frozen foods. And I'm going to give you a list of some of the personal standbys that I have in my kitchen, because I love cooking, and I've got some fun ways that I go about doing it all. So one of the reasons I decided to do this today is because now that I have an apartment and I have a giant kitchen, I've been having lots of fun cooking, and I'm really looking forward to having pretentious post-pandemic potlucks, because I love alliteration and pretentious things, and making pretentious things myself, because I have been far from pretentious my whole life. So it's a fun juxtaposition for me. So yes, post-pandemic pretentious potlucks are absolutely going to be a thing. I'm going to be doing them. I hope that you do them too. Because at the start of the pandemic, most people my age, really, and younger especially, didn't really know how to cook. At least not well. They might know how to make some hamburger helper or something, but most folks didn't know how to cook. And during the pandemic, I feel like that's changed a lot. There's been a lot more cooking shows and things popping up on television, but also on the internet, on YouTube and stuff, which has been really awesome. I think that's really great. Some more awesome things about making your own food is if you're making your own food, you're buying your own ingredients. And if you're buying your own ingredients, you can buy local ingredients to support your local farmers, and you can get the freshest food possible. And there's nothing better than the freshest produce and the freshest meats. Another really awesome thing to think about is if you do buy fresh local produce and meats, buying local is actually the single most beneficial thing that you can do for the planet environmentally when it comes to your diet. it's actually better to buy local than it is even to buy vegan, because buying vegan, there's still a lot of processed stuff. There can be a lot of processed stuff in the vegan diet. And there's a lot of textured vegetable protein and things that require some industrial processing. So when you look at the carbon footprint of that, you can actually do the best of saving the planet by buying locally. So there's that. So I told you I was going to give you some tips for a fun kitchen. The number one thing to make your kitchen life fun is have a sharp knife. Have a good sharp knife. That doesn't mean that you need to spend hundreds of dollars on a knife, which you can easily do, I promise you. But spending $50 on a knife can be really beneficial, because like your knife is the thing that you use the most in the kitchen. So all the chopping and the slicing and the cutting and all the fancy juliennes and the chiffons and all that kind of cool fancy words are all made way easier. They're made possible by a sharp knife. And when you have a knife that's fun to use, and if you buy a nicer, like close to $100 worth knife, if you buy a knife that's fun to use, you will want to cook more. And that's the whole purpose, is cook more, because it's awesome in all kinds of ways. So get a sharp knife, get a good knife. And because most of the knives that we can find for a decent price are Western style German steel chef's knives, they're a softer steel, which means softer versus harder steels. Softer steels don't hold an edge for as long, so your blade will go duller faster, but that means it will also go back to being sharp much sooner. A harder steel will retain an edge much longer, but is much more fragile, and it'll chip more, and chips happen when you use knives. But that's the difference between steels. Soft steel and soft steel is American steel, and usually the harder stuff is the Japanese steels. So for most people, grab yourself one of those $10 honing rods, one of those steel rods, that you see pictures or videos of people like rubbing their knife against a long metal rod. That's a honing rod. And for most of us with our cheap knives, we're going to need a honing rod in order to keep our knife sharp enough to use throughout a meal. Have a honing rod. Makes a big difference, because a sharp knife makes a big difference. And make it really fun. If you have a knife that's fun to use, you're way, way, way better off. Another tip for a fun kitchen is nobody likes cleaning up. I like cooking, but it makes a huge mess, and we don't like cleaning up. I don't know why it took me so long to have a garbage bowl. For a while, I would drag my trash can over to where I was if I was doing a bunch of something and I was throwing it all in a trash can, but that's so silly. Now I just use my biggest bowl, which is also extremely pretty because I'm me and I like super pretty stuff. So I have a beautiful bowl that I throw all of my garbage scraps in. And then when I'm done with those scraps, most of them I can shove into a plastic Ziploc bag and slap in the freezer, and I use those things like the ends of carrots or onions or squash or greens or whatever, any kind of root vegetables. I can put all of those into the freezer bag, and I use those to make a stock. So there are ways that you can use your what would be waste to save extra money as well, which I think is fantastic. Another thing is use the internet for foodstuffs. When I was a kid, I wanted to learn how to make all this stuff. I was more interested in food then because I had more time, I guess. I don't know. I love food now, and I'm super interested in it now. But because I grew up in the 90s, you couldn't get anything that you wanted at any time that you wanted. Now you can, but my brain doesn't remember that simply because of my age. So I have to remember that whatever weird seasoning that might be super duper hard to find in my head is not hard to find because the internet is real. So figure out whatever it is that you want to make, like your favorite freaking food. Come up with, I made chicken vindaloo yesterday. I cooked it all day. Well, I didn't cook it all day, but I spent all day cooking because I had no idea what to do to make Indian food. And I'd always wanted to make Indian food. And I bought like jars of masalas, and I've bought like the pre-packaged pastes and stuff to use to make things. But I really wanted to make Indian food because there's none near me. I have to drive hours. I would have to drive almost 5 hours there and back just to get Indian food. So I wanted to make it myself because the packaged stuff just wasn't good enough anymore. So I had to find a bunch of kind of obscure herbs. And turned out it wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be because the internet is super real and you can get a lot of herbs in a lot of places that you really didn't used to be able to do 10 years ago. So use the internet for like obtaining those hard to find ingredients and to teach you how to make stuff. I watched literally like a 7-minute video of some Indian lady making vindaloo. It was super short, super simple. You never even saw her face, but I liked it. And it made an amazing, amazing meal. In the next couple of days, I'm going to be doing hollandaise because I love a Benny. Jesus, do I love a Benny. I love, 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 love Bennies. I will put hollandaise sauce on anything, but I love an Eggs Benedict. So that's going to be the next one. And that's a notoriously difficult thing to learn. And when I was in school, going through home ec, that they called FACS at the time, Family and Consumer Science. Wow, I still remember that. Anyway, going through it, that was the only time that I was ever going to learn these types of things because you have to learn them from someone. You have to go to culinary school or whatever. Now you don't. You don't have to do any of that. You can just be like, I love Eggs Benedict and I want to make it at home. So there's tons of ways to save money, even if you want to be extra. Like Eggs Benny is extra, period. But I have a friend's bakery outlet close to my house, which is awesome because I can buy Fran's bread, which is a really good bread. It's organic and they got lots of seeds and stuff. And I either make my breads or if I'm buying sandwich bread, that's where I get it from. And if I spend, I don't know, like $6 or something, you get something off of this free rack when you leave because it's an outlet. So they take the stuff that is about to go bad or hasn't sold or got a little squished or whatever, and you can buy it there for dirt cheap. So I buy my breads a little bit ugly for dirt cheap, and then I get something off the free rack. And inevitably, the only thing left off the free rack are hot dog, hamburger buns, and English muffins. I don't really like English muffins. I don't like the texture of them. I'm a biscuit kind of guy. I like biscuits and croissants, but I love an English muffin for an Eggs Benny. So I can get my English muffin for free, put a thin little piece of deli meat on it, or your salmon if you want a Benedict Royale. I think that's what it is. Or you can use some spinach to make a Florentine Benedict. It's fantastic. But I can make this hollandaise sauce, put on a thin little piece of sandwich meat over top of a free Egg McMuffin, a poached egg, and then just dump the sauce on it. And suddenly I have this super fancy meal that I would have had to have gone to culinary school to even learn how to do. And I can do that just by utilizing the internet to learn the processes. So I think that's freaking awesome. I also mentioned that food is a fantastic way to learn about culture. And I realized this. I love trying new food when I'm in new countries, but I realized this firsthand yesterday as I was making that masala paste, the vindaloo masala. And masala is just the term for like the paste. So it's a bunch of seasonings, obviously, but what dawned on me was that all of the seasonings, mostly, are all whole seeds, freshly ground. And seeds retain their volatile oils much better than, say, like leafy greens do. So your basils and your parsleys and things like that, you can dry them out. They'll stay for a while, but whole seeds will stay for much, much longer. So all of a sudden it made a lot of sense that the cooking methods that they used and the seasonings that they use work really well for the culture, because the seasonings are those seeds that last a long time. They'll hold for a long time. So you can just have little jars of them, smash them all up and make a paste. And then whenever you get whatever your meal is, say like goat is a common meat consumed in India, and that goat can be tough and it can be gamey. So they tend to kind of slow cook stuff in a paste, and that paste is made from those seeds. So the natural processes of the cooking, it dawned on me, came from the necessity of cooking tougher meats. The seasonings that they use were born out of necessity for wanting flavor that stays fresh for a long time in hot, arid climates. Or really any climate, but especially hot, arid climates. So that was really cool to me, because I hadn't thought of the flavor profile of a certain region being determined by ecology of the region. Another reason that home cooking is so good, and I want more people doing it, is because it's amazing for people who have a troubled relationship with food. I have a very troubled relationship with food. I have a tendency to stuff myself and overeat on carbs and sugars to help regulate my nervous system. And I believe that anybody who has a troubled relationship with food, the reason that you have a troubled relationship with food is because you're using food to regulate your nervous system, which works. It's effective as hell. Like, food is nature's Vicodin, so it works out great. But what happens is, every time that we feel the need to kind of down-regulate our nervous system and take us from the speed of capitalism that we all live and work and breathe in all of the time, and we try to slow that down, we have a hard time doing it, so we just jump to food, and food will do it for us. Food will kick us from a sympathetic mode to a parasympathetic mode. That is the rest and digest. So clearly, if you eat something, your body will automatically go into kind of a rest and digest state. However, for people with a tough relationship with food, that's an issue, because then whenever we need to regulate ourselves, we just do what we did last time, which was just shove something in our face. And the more dysregulated we are, the more fatty, salty, greasy, sweet that food item needs to be in order to help us regulate our system. So the problem is we're turning to the food itself to regulate our nervous system. And for me as an addict, that's an issue, because I don't want any external thing regulating my nervous system completely anymore. I like my crutches and I like my habits and things that help, but I don't want to rely on something to regulate me. I want to regulate myself. And by getting more deeply involved with my food, now the process of food preparation and cooking is a part of my nervous system regulation now. So everybody does things differently. You don't need to do it the way that I do it. Most people would probably not enjoy doing it the way that I do it. But when I go to cook, I really like spending all day, like pretty much all day. I'll knock out whatever I need to knock out early in the morning and that sort of thing. And then I'll try to spend pretty much all day cooking and working on like the couple of things that I want to eat that evening. And it works really well on weekends because I can make like a giant pot of vindaloo. I can make the giant masala paste and put that in the fridge. And then that's ready throughout the week to just flop into whatever I want. You can't do that with hollandaise, but there are lots and lots of things that you can do that with. Because for me, I find it really soothing to spend an entire day making a loaf of bread and making soup to put inside the loaf and like hollowing out the thing and making breadcrumbs and to save for later. I love all of that process, and I love not letting anything go to waste. And in order to do that well, I need all day, because anything extra that would be wasted, I want to find a use for, and I kind of need all day to do that. So I don't like trying to put 45 minutes of hardcore effort into a dinner meal during the middle of the week if I've had a hard day. I don't do that at all. I'm either totally lazy or insanely involved with my food. I have amazing food a couple of times a week, and then the rest of the time, I'm pretty good with like anything from frozen pizzas to nut butter sandwiches. I'm pretty chill. I like plates of vegetables and that sort of thing, where it's just something real simple most of the time that doesn't take much effort, because I get so much pleasure and joy out of a whole day where I'm just experimenting and playing with my food. I think that's so fun, and it's so nice. So you don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it any certain type of way. I do it a super weird way, and I'm sure lots and lots of other people do too. One more really awesome part about this is the movement piece. You don't think about it. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but most of our movement that we expect as a species, and by we, I really mean our bodies, most of the movement that our bodies expect, we were expecting to be tied to food, gathering, and preparation. And now we do none of that. But you actually get a surprising amount of movement from cooking. And I don't just mean chopping. There is the chopping, but there's also the standing. There's also the walking. There's the bending over and picking things up from under the cabinet. There's reaching up tall over your heads to get things out of cupboards. There is the walking to and from the car and all around the grocery store. There is the lifting the items off of the grocery store aisle to put them into your cart and putting them onto the conveyor belt to get them paid for and then carrying them out again by hand. There's a lot of movement involved that we really don't think about. Not nearly as much movement as would be involved if we were like wandering the woods trying to find enough food to survive for the day. But a ton of movement nonetheless, compared to the amount of movement that many of us receive on our like day-to-day life. So movement is a serious benefit to making your own food that gets totally overlooked. It really does. You can get a lot of good quality movement, and what's so great about it is it's a variety of movement. Best of all, you're not sitting while you're cooking. You're standing, you're moving, you're engaged. And that brings me to my last and final piece about why I think cooking at home is so fantastic, is it helps us to change our relationship not only with the food and with regulating our nervous system, but it helps us with focus and task management. Because as you grow and like progress through your cooking, you realize really simple stuff like, okay, meat takes longer than greens, and you learn carrots take longer than celery, and you learn that onions take no time at all unless you're trying to really wilt them down. And so you slowly start to subconsciously pick up on these principles that make you think about things like time management. And those are all skills that have infinite applications in other areas of our life. We get much better at task-oriented thinking and time management. And time management is really a form of self-discipline. And that self-discipline leads to self-worth. Like making something really good with your own hands and then especially being able to eat it afterwards is fantastic and really makes you feel good, especially if whatever you made at the end was great. If it was edible, that's a win. And most of us are pretty okay with edible because, let's face it, I guarantee that you've spent $30 on a delivery burger at some point in your life that by the time it got to you was lukewarm and you still tipped $5. So do it. Dig in, man. I love home cooking. I love the fun that I get to have with it. I love the experimentation of it. I love the exploration of cultures. I love what it does for me and my own psychology. And I really love that my final rule that I'll leave you guys with, my rule for myself is, because I told you I love binge eating desserts. I mean, that's what desserts are for, right? Unfortunately, it's horrible for me, and I feel like death. Like that night, I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat thinking I have HIV or cancer because I feel so miserable in the middle of the night sometimes because I binge ate a bunch of sugar and carbs the night before. So my rule is I can have as many desserts as I want so long as I cook them from scratch myself. And it's a great rule. It's an awesome rule because I can have literally any dessert I want, and I can have as much as I possibly want. And because of that, when I'm going to go make them, I purposely buy things like coconut sugar, because coconut sugar has the lowest glycemic index of any other type of sugar. So I don't have the same sugar raise and crash that happens with regular white sugar because I use coconut. And I use less sugar than I normally would, and I use a lot of gluten-free grains, ancient grains, and just non-wheat grains as my flours because my body doesn't like a bunch of gluten. I eat it because gluten's awesome. Have you had a croissant? But I can't eat a bunch of it because it makes me sick because I made croissants, and that's when I found out that I have a gluten intolerance. So although I might try to make croissants again, but using a better flour, because a really good quality flour that definitely doesn't have any Roundup in it might have not caused that reaction. But I'll let you know when I do that again. It was a lot of work, so it's going to be a while. But that's a rule I have for me in my kitchen. I can have as many desserts as I want, so long as I cook them all by myself from scratch. All right, I know I said that was kind of the last thing, but I want to talk about a couple more real quickly. Fresh versus frozen, like foods, veggies, fish especially. This is a big debate. Fresh versus frozen was a big thing for me. Fresh versus canned as well. Something to think about, I didn't learn until recently. One, the way that we freeze things is different now. The technology that we use, like liquid nitrogen, can freeze something and it maintains its texture much better and its flavor much better. So individually frozen things can do really well, much better than they did 10 years ago. If you haven't tried cooking frozen stuff since 10 years ago when it was like, I don't even know what the process was then. It is dramatically improved. I can promise you that. But fresh versus frozen, if you get fresh food, especially if it's out of season, what's happened is that produce was picked before it was ripe, thrown onto a truck, and allowed 3, 4, 5, 6 a week of travel time, compensating for, all right, it's not ripe now, but it will be by the time it gets to the place where you're going to buy it. Well, anything picked not at peak ripeness is not going to have the flavor or the texture that you want, or the nutritional content that you're looking for. But frozen stuff is picked at its peak of ripeness and then often instantly frozen within 12 or 24 hours. And although frozen does make you lose some vitamin E, it retains all of the other nutrients in the food. The only issue I have with frozen things is it messes with the texture. Even the new style of freezing stuff does mess with the texture, not nearly as much as it used to, but there are ways of getting around that. I have bags of mixed frozen vegetables, like the mixed California blend with the broccoli and the cauliflower and the carrot and stuff. And I often will make that for just like a lunch snack on some wild rice or whatever. And I fry them on a really, really, really high heat to get all of the water out as fast as I can. And I cook them until they're almost dry. And I turn them down so they don't burn, but I cook them till they're almost dry at as high a heat as I can without them burning. And then I'll flop in a tablespoon of butter or whatever, and they retain all of that. Like, you get the good softness on the outside, but they still have that firmness on the inside that you need from Like if you're going to have a vegetable be the hero of the dish, they can't be soggy grossness. Great other fresh versus frozen things. I have frozen gyozas. Keep frozen gyozas in the freezer. You can pan fry them. You can steam them. You can flop them into soup. You can do so many things. And they come out to like 50 cents a dumpling. I've tried making dumplings. I have made dumplings. I've made raviolis. It's a freaking process. And to be able to get good quality ones for like 50 cents a dumpling, oh my God. Especially the pork and leek kind. Ooh, those are so good. Or cabbage and leek. Cabbage and leek are my favorite. I love those things. So there are things that you can get in the frozen section that are really good, really fast, really easy, and you don't need to compromise on quality, on flavor. When it comes to food, buy the best thing that you can afford. Whatever that is for you, just buy the best that you can afford. Don't buy the cheapest of anything, because the cheapest is as cheap as it can possibly be for a reason, and there is no such thing as cheap food. Food is expensive. Growing food is expensive. Processing food is expensive. Transporting food is expensive. If you don't pay for the expense of the food, something does. And that something or someone is almost always the environment. So do the best that you can. Everything has a cost. Fresh, frozen, cooking at home, takeout, everything has a cost and benefit analysis. Do what's right for you. But home cooking is really, really, really awesome. Last things to have in your kitchen, I always have, get some better than bouillon. You can flop it into anything. Have some sour cream, have some cream cheese. You can dump those into the better than bouillon and make fantastic sauces to pour over top of stuff. Clearly, you'll have to have some seasonings. Get some bags of frozen veggies like I do. If nothing else, have bags of frozen spinach, because there's no reason that fresh spinach needs to occupy 3 cubic foot of your fridge, because it takes up so much space and you always lose that space, and you're always wilting the spinach anyways, and it always goes down to next to nothing. So cost benefit analysis actually puts spinach, fresh versus frozen, at frozen is 7 times cheaper if you buy frozen spinach over fresh. When you get down to its post-cooked weight, that price is 7 times more expensive with fresh. And the difference in cost or the difference in flavor is negligible. So there you go. That's today's episode. I hope that you really enjoyed it. I hope that you do some food stuff. Go do food stuffs. Pick a day. Do food stuffs. You're like, I'm gonna do food stuffs on this Saturday, and you can meal prep and all that, and yeah, hooray, those things are great, but that's work, and that's a great way to put work in. And if you're that kind of person, do it. I right now am looking at food as one of my best self-care methods. I've mentioned before, I'm not very good at self-care, and I just recently realized that cooking all day is self-care. Forcing myself to cook a meal in 45 minutes in the evening, even if it comes delivered to my door with exactly the ingredients that I need and a step-by-step recipe with everything I need to know, it's still not nice. I don't enjoy that. I enjoy the meal when it's done, but doing it the way I do it, I enjoy the entire process from beginning to end. And maybe if I keep doing it this way, I'll get back into the groove of wanting to cook fancier stuff every single day, with time being taken into account. If you've made it this long in the podcast, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Go to the store. Get yourself a honing rod. Get yourself a bottle of good seasonings. If you're going to buy a mixed or a blend especially, if there's something that you like, if you like herbs de Provence or you like Italian seasonings, buy the expensive thing and buy it once and just use that. Don't use the 99-cent stuff. You will just constantly be disappointing yourself. That's my final bit of advice. Remember, stay blessed and stay uncomfortable.